Well, thank you. Hi, my name is Eric Friedman. I'm the Executive Director of the Meadow Valley Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for joining in on the Chamber's ongoing Coffee and Conversation series. This is a periodic opportunity for us to discuss issues in our community that are relevant to our business community, residents and visitors alike. And I'd like to thank the Meadow Valley Chamber of Commerce members for making this programming like this possible. Our topic today is the Meadow Valley's beloved trail system and how it's being impacted during our current health crisis. Our trail system is made possible by an amalgamation of land and effort from various organizations, private landowners, nonprofits, local and state, federal governments, and business. The trail system is vital to the well-being of our full-time residents and is a big part of Meadow Valley's allure for our visitors and potential visitors. Joining us today are representatives from some of the organizations in our community that are responsible for stewarding the amazing resource that is our trail network. Let me just first introduce, we're going to have Ross Saxon from the Mad River Path is here, Joshua Schwartz from the Mad River Valley Planning District, Jeff Whittingham is here representing the Mad River Valley Recreation District, Bob Kogut from the Mad River Riders, the biking organization, John
Multi-use trail organization.
And John Atkinson also from the Meadow River Riders, John Bleh from Sugarbush Resort, and did I forget somebody?
Trevor.
I'm sorry, Trevor. Trevor Lashua from is the town administrator for the town of Waitsfield. I'm sorry about that, Trevor.
No worries.
I thought a good way to kick off our conversation is to maybe get an understanding of the scope of what the trail system in the Meadow River Valley is all about. Joshua Schwartz from the Meadow River Planning District has been really instrumental in pulling all of the stakeholders in our trail system together over the last few years in our Trails Collaborative. And so he might be a good person to kick things off and give an overview of what our trail system is all about here in the Meadow River Valley.
Thank you, Eric, and thanks for everyone on this call. And really, there are multiple people who can speak to this for sure that are on this call. But the Meadow Valley Trail System consists of over 185 miles of trails, lots of different organizations, approximately 15 trail and conservation organizations that all play a very key role in stewarding. In addition to that, and those are organizations at the federal, state, local level, municipal, nonprofit, and landowners. The majority of our trails are on privately owned land, thanks to their permission. So there are many different organizations at play working together to provide multi-use public access to trails that range from the long trail up on the on our western ridge to trails that are on the valley floor, and a lot of connection in between. So we're really blessed that this system continues to grow every year and get stronger. There's an addition of mileage, as well as investment in existing trails, as well as signage and mapping to make it clear and easier for people to navigate and accommodating trail users. So a lot of education, a lot of hours working on trails, and it really is the work of the trail stewards who work on those relationships and the long-term work. But we've done a fair amount of facilitation and bringing folks together through the planning district and having conversations and lots of different perspectives to ensure that we are building and maintaining a system that reflects the interests and the values of the Mad River Valley community. So we've got a strong thing going.
Thanks, Joshua. I think when people think trails, I think sometimes the first thing to come to mind is the Mad River Path. And in a lot of people's mind, that's what they think of. Ross Saxon is here from the Mad River Path. I'm curious, tell us a little bit about your organization and the stewardship and how the role you folks play in the stewardship of your part of the trail system here in the community.
Sure. Well, to start at the beginning, about 30 years ago, the idea was to connect the four towns from Warren to Moortown with one continuous pathway that anyone could use. So we're still working on that today to make those connections. And the majority of the trails, pathways that the Mad River Path form and maintain are pretty easy access. So the idea is that pretty much anyone can get on them and enjoy the outdoors and engage with nature in their own way, whoever that might be. So we have a lot of flat, wide berth areas, which was amazing to help us during the COVID-19 past several weeks for folks to get out when a lot of the other trails, because of mud season and their narrowness and just how people kind of have to be a little bit more grouped together, had to be closed. They would have been closed anyways for mud season, but to have somewhere where people can get outside was really important for this last several weeks. So we're pretty psyched for that. And so the path, we're growing every year. We've started over the past several years as well to kind of do these little loops and connections off the side of the main trail off the valley floor. The idea was to keep it right along the river the whole time. That was the original idea, but as we continue to work, we realized we've got to get real flexible and take different ways away from the river a little bit. Which we're doing. So we're staying flexible and working with landowners, mostly private, but also public, to make new connections happen. And it's really important to connect to the existing trail systems. So we have a lot of trail systems, working with the riders and other groups where some of them are a little bit isolated, like Gumball is one example. It's an awesome, a little bit more advanced system, but we're working to connect that a little bit better to downtown over time. There's some other examples of that too.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. When you talk about, you mentioned the Mad River Riders and their extensive system. And again, for folks that don't know, the Mad River Riders are bicycling organization.
Multi-use.
That's why I'm giving you your opportunity to say something. Pull your jets, John. That's why we have Bob. Bob, give us a little rundown on what the Meadow River Riders are up to.
Okay, so the Meadow River Riders we are a chapter of the Vermont Mountain Bike Association. In fact, one of the founding chapters. So John can correct me, but we don't need the details to be right now. We're roughly 30 years old as well, similar to the Path's age.
34.
We are dedicated to developing trails in the Meadow River Valley, and our trails always kind of follow one rule. They've got to be free and open access to anyone who wants to use them, and they are multi-use. We are mountain bikers, but we make trails that you can run on, walk on, ride on, ski on, and we kind of keep that mantra through everything that we do. So we've got some trail counter data from some of our trails at Blueberry Lake especially, and also Revolution and Evolution, and some survey data that shows about like kind of half our users are running or walking on our trails at least, and riders are maybe the other half or in the minority. What else do we do? So we've been growing rapidly. Our membership, we're pushing 400 members right now. So we're at kind of a record pace. Last year, we topped out about 516 kind of paying members. That money gets used mostly in the valley. Half of it goes immediately back to us. About another 25% comes back from VIMBA to us to build trails in the valley. And then the 25% that maybe leaves the valley is helping us out in the big picture by VIMBA working with the state on kind of access to state land and liability protections, lots of useful things like that. So we're growing in members, and we're growing in trail count. We're up to, I think the current count's about 56 miles of trails in the Meadow River Valley that the riders maintain every year, and we personally built most of that too. Any other questions, Eric, or is that covered?
No, that's good. I appreciate it. Just like I said, I want to get a little bit of background. And, there's a lot of trails that, people, again, other trails that people don't necessarily think about are the ones at the ski areas, like at Mad River Glen. the hiking trail up there. Accessing the long trail is actually an official side trail to the long trail. There's also, and the long trail goes to the top of all the ski areas here in the valley along the Monroe skyline. John, do you want to speak to talk about the trails at Sugarbush Resort? John Bleh, who is the spokesperson for Sugarbush Resort, is here.
Spokesperson, nice.
Yeah. What's your actual title?
It changes. It's I think PR communications manager is what
There
I'm
you
at.
go. Very impressive.
I like spokesperson better. Yeah, sure. So at Sugarbush, yes, the long trail runs over the ridge of the Monroe skyline over to Mad River Glen. We have several hiking trails, either work roads or through the woods at both of our at our two different mountain areas, and then we have a number of mountain bike trails too. Right now, and maybe I'm getting ahead of the gun, but all those hiking trails are open and welcome to be used. We don't really open or close our hiking trails, but due to everything that's been happening, we're not really maintaining those hiking trails. So it's worth people just knowing that, you know, we don't have sort of trail maintenance crews up there, given everything that's been going on in the world right now. As far as mountain biking goes and all those trails, we're unsure if we're going to offer that this year. A lot of our summer operations is so reliant on the wedding business, and weddings have been pushed. Right now, I think we're looking at August as our potential first weddings. And so we'll have to figure out if it makes sense to operate downhill mountain biking. If we don't, you know, those trails, while not being maintained, could be offered as alternative hiking trails. But right now, you're welcome to hike on the mountain. It's a great way to get outdoors and socially distance. And then obviously we ask, just like the Green Mountain Club and everyone else is asking, you know, be respectful of distancing, pack it in, pack it out, pick up after your dog, all that sort of stuff. So hiking is a great way to sort of alleviate what's going on right now and be outside.
Thanks, John. Jeff Whittingham is here from the Meadow River Valley Recreation District. And Jeff, can you tell, people might not know what the Recreation District is and what it's about, and maybe a little bit about how you interact with the other organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Rec District was formed in 1993 as a way to help assist, fund, and maintain recreational opportunities here in the Valley. Us being 4 small towns makes it challenging to have one consolidated paid rec district. Well, 5. Yeah, that's right. Thanks, John. So the towns of Warren, Fayeston, and Waitsfield agreed to be participants in the rec district. Right now, our funding is equal from each of those towns at $15,000. So we have a $45,000 budget that we disperse across different groups to ensure that we have a good balance of recreational opportunities for folks of all abilities, interests, and ages. That's really the main goal, is to help ensure our community has an opportunity to be outside, to recreate in a variety of ways. And in the spirit of this meeting, trails are an incredibly important part of the recreational economy, which we also, especially since I've been on the board, have had a lot more interest in making sure that we're an active participant in that. To make sure that we have adequate jobs and revenue flowing throughout the season versus just in the ski season, right? So when it comes to direct partnership with the different groups, you know, essentially there's a grant fund cycle where to any group that has a recreational concept or a repeat need for funding, such as, you know, mowing the grass at a couples club, comes to the rec district with their grant proposal. We talk through what they're looking to do, what they're looking to achieve, and then we disperse the funds as we as a group vote as we see best to try to maintain that balance of recreation, right, for the community members and as part of the recreation economy.
Thanks, Jeff. Trevor is here. He's the town administrator for Waitsfield. And I really want to have you in on this conversation because I think the towns are an integral part of what we're trying to do with the trails. Can you maybe give a little bit of background in, you know, what your role is and maybe a little more generally, not just Waitsfield per se, but, you know, the other towns as well?
Yeah, I tried to write down what it is municipalities often do with regards to trails. And so just listed them. We're a landowner, policy body, source of funding, manager, mediator, regulator, collaborator, connector, and cheerleader. Sometimes we're all of those things at once. Sometimes the roles we play vary by location and trail type.
Trevor, I've never seen pom-poms.
We've got them. We just we keep them in storage, and they're a good way to support and maintain social distance too, because people avoid someone with pom poms. Sometimes their support's active. There've been, it might be acquisition of land. It might be providing funding. That map project's a good example of that. Sometimes it's more passive, where it might be letters of support for grants, general encouragement, using our website as a platform or other communication tools. And trails are really something we've said in formal and informal policy documents that we value. They hit 3 key elements of what everybody said is important. I think both in Waitsfield and the Mad River Valley, they speak to our quality of life, they speak to economic development, and they're a key piece of our environmental stewardship efforts. So they're an important element. And I think we saw through this latest round of the pandemic and some of the challenges, they were a key piece in keeping people active, keeping people happy. They were certainly, for me, with 2 young kids, more than they saved my sanity. So they saw a little bit of an uptick in use, and that created some challenges with access management and how do you do that safely and public safety guidelines. So we can play a broad role, and sometimes we're just lurking in the background, ready to help if need be.
Thanks a lot, Trevor. I appreciate that input. So you mentioned, Trevor, that a lot of people are getting out lately, and I think everyone has seen that, and it seems like there's really an uptick in the number of people accessing our trails. Would someone like to speak to what that's looked like on the ground here in the Mad River Valley?
I can talk a little bit about that, because we definitely saw a ton of more, or not about a ton, but definitely more usage on the Mad River Path. One of the ways we measured that was just by the number of dog waste bags getting used, which was more this spring than usual. So it's great people were out there picking up their dog poop for the most part. Still a few people need to do that. So if that's anyone listening, pick up your dog poop, please. And we along with some other groups, we had to put out some guidelines on how to use the trails with so many people out there, especially a time when we needed to distance for safety reasons. So we made some recommendations on, if you see a parking lot half full, come back later or go to another spot. So it was a good team effort that the rec district helped coordinate along with the planning district to get folks aware of what trails were open, which ones were closed, and then those safety guidelines too. So it was a good group effort. Another good reason to have the Trails Collaborative as a part of the picture here.
Mm-hmm. Bob, what do you think? What's going on with the Mad River Rider Trails?
So it's ticking up a lot lately. We stayed closed for maybe a bit longer. VIMBA kind of made a statewide decision that the best choice was to kind of not open the trails, especially when we had to stay home, stay safe order. So we stayed with that. For one, that we thought it was the correct choice from a public health perspective. And the other was practically, and maybe John Blake could talk to this, like if you're the only one open and everybody else is closed, you run a risk of kind of getting overrun and completely countering the social distance that you're trying to put forward. So for that reason, we stayed closed for a bit. So we have been open though. We've been open since the governor started kind of relaxing restrictions on outdoor recreation. And we haven't gathered any real data, trail counter data yet. There are some trail counters out there that the state has in place, and we can go and see if that's an uptick. To me, like subjectively, yeah, it looks pretty busy. There's some pent up demand. Looking at our membership numbers, those are rising faster than any year in the past, and that's when people haven't been able to use the trails. So they're signing up, I think, because they're psyched and they want to go out there and ride and run on the trails. We are, once we open though, we are like Ross, we coordinated a message with other VIMBA chapters, and we actually made a couple of local variations to it. We put that message out on our social media platforms, on our website, posted it at some of the trailheads using the signs that Josh Schwartz helped coordinate on that project. And yeah, generally it's a good, safe activity in this time of social distancing. You got to keep your distance on the trail. Keep personal contact to a minimum. We just started up our Rippers program, which is a program I've been running for about 7 years or so, since my daughter was a little kid.
Great photo opportunity, Bob.
Oh yeah, it's a great photo op. Yeah. Well, so in past years, it's been almost all at Blueberry Lake, and we've had 60 kids show up at Blueberry Lake plus parents, right? So you can imagine that would be, probably counter to the a social distancing good practice now. So we've modified the program this year. Instead of having basically one big meetup, we created an online spreadsheet that we share with anybody who's interested, open to the public, and we're doing a number of rides simultaneously at different locations. And we cap each ride at 10 people total, kids, parents, and guides included. So last night was the first night. So we had 2 rides go off kind of separately out of Blueberry Lake, and then I ran one that we did out of the Sugarbush Inn, start and finish there. So
yeah, it's really cool the creative ways that that you folks are trying to deal with this situation. I mean, it's really remarkable the way the business community has kind of pivoted and done things in different ways and really thought things through. And it's really interesting to see the way that that you folks are managing and stewarding the trail system there. Any other ways that the trail steward organizations are dealing with this crisis that we haven't talked about?
I would just add, Bob's right. It's tough to, open when you're sort of the only ones, because you're going to make a funnel, right? With the example of uphill travel when Mad River Glen and Sugarbush closed, and then the influx of people that started to come there, particularly as ski areas around them started closing. It's the same with biking. It's the same with hiking to an extent. And I would say the trails are one thing, but the parking lots are almost the worst part. Like Ross was saying, is you really got to be wary of people gathering in the parking lots and hanging out because they have nowhere else to gather and hang out, right? This is the only time they're seeing their friends. And so that's tough to monitor, but it's important to sort of keep an eye on that. And that's why, Sugarbush and Mad River Glen ended up closing hiking and skinning, is because the parking lot was out of control. It's just something to pay attention to.
And just to add to that, at the beginning of maybe early April, so after, we were at stay-at-home order was in place, we discussed, the rec district discussed as a group whether or not to publish a list of open trails and open recreation opportunities because of what we witnessed at Sugarbush and Mad River Glen being the only open ones, right? And maybe by publishing a list, that might drive additional traffic from outside of that 10-mile radius that we've been asked to maintain, right, in our recreational activities, even though that's now been lifted. But we determined as a group that it was more important for our community to know where they should go and not go than to not say anything at all. But we definitely had to, in this crazy time, you have to really think through those decisions for the best of our community.
Right, for sure. How can the public help? I mean, I'm curious to know, how has this been received so far by the general public? Do you feel like people are respecting the limitations? Or are you having issues with it? And how is that being monitored?
I mean, just subjectively watching people at the trails and the parents and kids that showed up to the Rippers. I mean, they've been great. I mean, we live in the greatest state. I mean, people take the social distancing seriously. They listen to guidelines. They're respectful of each other. It's like, I'm always quite happy, quite surprised even. I wouldn't expect that people would put up with this kind of isolation and social distancing and stuff and wearing a mask every time you go on the Hurons and all that. And people do, and we kind of see it with the trails too. So I do a local ride, with a bunch of buds, including Jeff is one of them, on Thursdays. And, we've adapted that ride. We used to kind of hang out in the small room afterwards and have a couple of beers. And now we we keep about 15 feet apart, a giant field after our ride, and we set out on our ride in a bunch of smaller groups that keep apart.
But
So
you still have
these
beer.
are all a bunch of like, overprivileged, kind of middle-aged, mostly white guys, and they're, you wouldn't expect them to do the right thing, but they all are. So I'm always pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. One of the things, also is we do have visitors coming from out of state, and hopefully they are respecting the 14-day quarantine order as has come out. Have you seen any issues with that at all?
I feel like there was a large population of second homeowners that came up here right away, and those people, because they've decided to sort of dedicate part of their lives to the Mad River Valley, just like the community here, seem to be really respectful of all the sort of protocols that have been put in place. So it's nice to see. I know that's not always the case. I know Memorial Day weekend was busy, and all those people definitely didn't live here, but it's nice to see, at least, like Bob was saying, our community seems to be really respecting the rules. Every time you go to the grocery store, everyone's wearing a mask, as well as the second homeowners. There's plenty of people without Vermont license plates driving around, but most of them seem to have been here for a while.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other concerns that I've had is, not only is are the trails limited in terms of, how, we're trying to keep people distanced there, and a lot of the businesses are also limited, which is limiting the amount of bathrooms facilities and garbage facilities that are out there. What's the impact from a facilities perspective? And I know, Trevor, we talked about that last week about, how that's impacting the town. And can you maybe speak to, what you're trying to do and the way you're working with other folks to mitigate those issues?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to find the right balance between some of the public health guidelines and providing some of these facilities and types of services people are used to, especially when use of the parks and open spaces and trails are still there. And the challenges, we've had to keep certain facilities closed or limited, or have them on site later than we normally would, in large part because it's about having the capacity to make sure that they've stayed as clean as possible, that we're able to grab garbage on a regular schedule, that those portalets have some kind of attention. Normally you'd see public restrooms in use at both the White House and here at the town offices. Last summer we saw a large uptick in the number of groups that were out road cycling, would stop in, and this was a waypoint to meet, to use some public facilities, and those aren't available anymore. And so far everybody's been really good in understanding about all of this as summer goes on, and as all of this, the public health guidelines continue forward, we'll see if that maintains. But the challenge is really trying to figure out what's the right time to make some of these things available, and is there a way we can do so as safely as possible, given that we have limitations both in terms of our human resources. We don't have a dedicated park staff, we don't have a dedicated facility staff. I think all of the towns are kind of in that same space, and we rely heavily on partner organizations, on volunteers. So some of it's about, lights go off after a certain time, and there they are. And so how can we maybe cobble together some kind of coalition to get through this summer in a different fashion? So we're actively planning and trying to be as adaptable as possible. And that's something that governments of all size sometimes struggle with, is adaptability and entrepreneurship. But we're trying.
Well, thank you, Trevor. Have the riders or the Path organization thought about the facilities side of it and the trailhead side of it, and how, just in dealing with just what people do in terms of garbage and waste and all that?
Well, so the trailhead side of it, like many organizations, we just give the same kind of advice and put that message out that Ross has said, that one of the main things we want to avoid is crowded trailheads. I have not seen any trash at trailheads or on trails. I think people are being good. Long term, and other than that, we really don't have facilities other than the trail is the facility. long term, we'd like to have maybe a ride center or something. I think I've talked with you about this once, that, you know, the Kingdom Trails where people go, or down there at Ascutney, and have a, you know, kind of informational spot and a little starting and finishing point. But that's kind of off in the future, another topic for a different discussion.
Interesting. What other, there's other things that have been going on, you know, during this pandemic, which again, we talked about how kind of organizations have pivoted a little bit. One of the things I saw that the Path was doing, that you started the Yes Tomorrow Speaker Series. You want to talk about that a little bit, Ross?
What is it, Eric?
About the Yes Tomorrow Speaker Series that you were working on with the Path?
Oh, this was just an evening as a part of their series that they invited us to talk about, you know, what we're up to, you know, kind of recap of last year and what we're up to this year. So that's an ongoing thing that they're doing with other organizations and other people as well. But yeah, so yeah, you can give that a shout out.
Yeah.
You can actually go see the recorded version of that if you want a whole rundown on what the Path is up to this year. But yeah, I mean, on that note, we have been increasing our activities for folks to become engaged with the outdoors more. So as an example, when you're out on the Path, you know, a lot of people love to just get out and go for a cruise, or any of the trails, or just even if you're bushwhacking somewhere.
Yeah.
But we wanted to give families and people activities to do as well. So there's a couple new programs that we started, like bird bingo, for example. You can print out this bingo card and you go check off all the common species of birds, and it's just a fun thing to do with your family. Another thing is the biggest tree challenge. So we're asking folks to go and measure the biggest trees that they can find around the valley. So it kind of gives you a mission to do, and you know, you can do this while you're isolating with your family, so you don't have to do it in groups, or you can do it solo. So it's a safe way to get outside and enjoy the outdoors in kind of a little bit of a different way.
So Ross, can you tell us so far, like, what's the biggest tree? Or is
We've had some come in at about 200-inch circumference, which is a big tree. I think there's been said that we have some of the biggest trees here in the valley, like in New England. I think we have possibly confirmed the second largest elm tree in New England.
Really?
So yeah, there's some huge ones here.
Okay, that could be a whole coffee and conversation unto itself.
It could be. Yeah.
So is this ongoing? Is there going to be a final determination, or will this be an ongoing thing?
Yeah, we'll have our final largest tree at the end of the year, and whoever submits that will actually win a custom-made bench from Charlie Hosford, who's our boardwalk extraordinaire.
You're not going to cut it down to make the bench, right?
We talked about that, but no, we're not going to.
Interesting. No, that's really cool. Now, the Mad River Riders have been pretty active too. You got some new trails coming on. I was pretty excited, Bob, when I found out the latest ones were in Myville here in Moortown. So you want to tell us what's going on there?
So that's our biggest project for the summer. So Moortown and is we're going to build a skills park, a pump track skills park. So a pretty good sized one. So that's a thing you can, little kids especially, and adults and anyone will enjoy kind of riding multiple loops, or running or just kind of playing on it like it's a playground as well. So we're going to build that. It'll be kind of a state-of-the-art pump track skills track. And then we are going to build a new 1 mile mountain bike / multi-use trail, John, that will be kind of accessible to kids and people with a lot of different ability levels in the woods, in the Moortown Town Forest right there. So there is a trail there now, a nature trail. We're going to upgrade part of that. We're going to add some new sections, and it's going to be a really nice mile-long loop that kids are just going to want to lap. So that's the big project. We are Evolution 2, which is the 2 mile extension Evolution, will be done this week, we think. John's doing the inspection with the state guy on Thursday. We think he's going to probably give us the thumbs up to have it officially open. So that'll be done. That trail, I've test ridden it several times now, is awesome. So now Evolution, we're not going to call it Evolution 2 anymore. It's just going to be Evolution. So now we've added 2 miles. It's going to be a 3.5 mile continuous trail from the top of Enchanted Forest, where it runs into Revolution, which is I think, a good 1.5 miles. So we've got an uninterrupted, 5-mile downhill. If you start from the top of Enchanted Forest, it's one of the longest kind of continuous good single track descents in the state. That'll be done.
That's really. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bob.
We are upgrading. We're going to put a bunch of time into Revolution to upgrade it. So that's the trail that goes up from the back of Flatbread. And that trail gets an enormous amount of traffic. We've got the data to back that up, tens of thousands of uses per summer. So we're going to give it a little love this year and reshape turns and make it a bit more bulletproof than it already is. We are going to build a spur trail off of that leads to the back of the Mill Brook, kind of across from the field of Local Smoke Folkhouse. We've got approval from the 2 landowners involved, the Laskowski family and John Morris on the other side. And at some point, we plan to build a bridge over the Mill Brook so that you can get into the heart of that trail system from the heart of the village. So we'll get the trail done this year. We may or may not get the bridge done. So there's a lot of permitting, as you would imagine, with that thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm really glad that you point that out, of how the trails have really worked hard to integrate into the downtowns, into the community, because it's such an important, economically speaking, trails are really, really important to us. And we really appreciate the fact that you're trying to tie into the community so people can access them more. In terms of access, something like in the neighborhood of about 50 some odd trailhead signs were installed over the past year. Joshua, do you want to talk? I think people have seen those, and maybe talk a little bit about the collaboration and the Trails Collaborative and what that was all about and what the end results have been and where it's going.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the trail organizations have been working together for as long as there's been trail organizations, but there's been a real concerted effort in the last couple of years. About 10 years ago, 11 years ago, the trail organizations came together to have a discussion about what's going on, what is our potential, how do we work better together, and that was the first Meadow Valley Trails Summit that I was a part of in 2010. And there were a bunch of goals set out, which was work better together, have a printed map that shows all the Meadow Valley trails, do some projects together with shared grant applications, and do a better job of getting the word out about our trails online. And that work has continued and really got a boost about 4 years ago with the MRV Moves Active Transportation Plan, which engaged the whole community to identify and envision what a watershed-wide trail network looks like. We have so many assets and so many hardworking trail organizations and willing landowners, and if we were to increase coordination in connectivity, what does that look like? And essentially, what came out of that process was an integrated system that really focuses on connectivity and the ability to really connect our nodes and destinations, which are mostly our villages and major recreation locations. So Waitsville Village, the Warren School, and Lincoln Peak, Blueberry Lake, so on and so forth. And so that plan identifies priorities for connectivity, and was made possible through the engagement of the trail organizations and the broad community. Some of all the trail groups came together in 2000, I can't even remember anymore, 2017, and said, how do we implement this? Where do we go from here? And what was identified by the group said let's work on unifying our messaging, having clear signage, trailhead signage with a clear message that says this is the Meadow Valley Trail Network. And so that became the Unified Trailhead Kiosk and Mapping Project. Going to print next week would be the last batch, which will give us about 50 trailhead kiosk signs. More than half were in the ground last year. And these are on trailheads across the Meadow Valley on a variety of different locations that has a consistent messaging, that have maps that tell people that are welcoming and clearly articulate what the use is, what's allowed there, and a description of what one could encounter. It's also opportunities to share messages. So during COVID-19 or during trail closures, these clearly articulate what the situation is. And so that's part of our broad messaging. But it's been a really tremendous project, and excited for the next, what do we got, 11 more going to print here soon that are mostly on Maverick Riders Trails. So this has been a really great collaborative. But there's been 3 parts to this project. One is the Trailhead Kiosk across the valley. Again, 50 trailheads, and there's many more than that in our network, but those are the ones that the trail organizations wanted to have, these Trailhead kiosks, municipal land, private land, state land. But also there was a mapping portion. So there was a new paper map, Matter Valley Trails map that was released this time last year. That is a paper map available for folks, made by a private company called Map Adventures. So it's available in local stores, online through Map Adventures, and more regionally. And we were able to get 1,000 of those and made them available to the community at no cost, available at the town offices and libraries across the valley. So that's the paper trail map. And then there's the digital trail map, taking this information and having a one-stop online location for all the trails. Each trail organization uses, you can go to their website and get information about their trails, but we tried to create one thing that would encompass all 185 miles of trails, including vast trails. And that is available at trailfinder.info. So trailfinder.info is a project really related with the state of Vermont, but also New Hampshire and Maine. And you can identify, and it's an interactive map with a variety of information. You could also go to mattervalley.com/trails, and that map's available there, and information of the collaborative. So part of the piece of the work, speaking of COVID-19 and understanding expectations, is having a clear message. And this work and the collaboration over 10 plus years, we've really exercised our ability to work together and have a clear messaging, a lot of leadership from the recreation district in getting the word out, and communicating with our towns, and utilizing the newspaper and utilizing these different outlets. But you could go to trailfinder.info, and it identified which trails were closed for what reasons, and keeping that up to date. So a lot of great partners doing this work. So we got kiosks, a paper map, and digital map. We're in a really great place 3 years later.
Awesome. And is there a direction, is there a next step for this? I know one of the things I understood is there's more wayfinding maps. I mean, wayfinding signage is sort of the next step.
Yeah, so the next step was to update the Matter Valley Byway kiosk, and integrate it with the Trailhead kiosk information. So that's the next step related to that project. We are looking forward to having the Trails Collaborative have another summit. We had one scheduled for March that got postponed, but working with the different trail organizations and conservation organizations to say, hey, so we accomplished something major, and where do we want to go from here, and how do we continue to meet our goals? I actually went through the active transportation plan just last month and looked at the implementation table. And I'm proud to say that about 30% of the items on the implementation table we've made progress on. So 30 out of 30% over a 3-year period. That's pretty good. And that's due to all the hard work of the different trail organizations chipping away in our municipalities, working hard. So this has been a great project, but there's been a lot of other accomplishments too.
Hey, Josh, and all those meetings you facilitated, we did talk about kind of the next levels down to signage too, and we've been doing that, so has the past. So
yeah,
you might see some, if you get up on Revolution, you get off Indian Hill Road, you see some of the ones that we put up. So at trail intersections that are away from the kiosk and the trailhead, we, the riders, have some routed wood signs that give you a direction on the trail. That's kind of the next step down. And then the next level down from that, Eric, is basically blazes. Like, everybody's familiar with the Long Trail blaze, or maybe the Catamount Trail, kind of blue blazes. The path, sorry, And us, the riders, are adding blazes on the trail, on trees kind of along the way, just to kind of reassure you that you are on the right path, this is the trail you're on. So we started putting those up too. So the riders ones, if it's a rider's trail, you'll see little red rectangles, they're diamonds because we put them in that orientation, on the occasional tree along a trail to kind of reinforce that you're not lost.
No, that's
The
great.
path ones are white.
So the path ones are what? Are white?
Yeah, that we're working on getting those up too. Yeah.
Cool.
That's terrific. And as you mentioned, that kind of, as you mentioned, Josh, the consistent signage and having that message just from the Chamber of Commerce perspective, that's really, really important because for visitors, having this package of all of these trails and all these options is a really attractive lure for people as we're talking about trying to bring visitors here to the Valley. It's a really important thing. So it's amazing the way all of the trail organizations have kind of put aside that their logos and and their egos and everything because they understood that having that umbrella of the Mad River Valley is really important. So we're really appreciative of what all of the groups have done for this. One of the things I did want to remind people, we have a really good representation of some of the organizations involved, but there's some that aren't represented that are part of the trail network here. In fact, the largest segment of the trail network is the Vermont Association of Snow Travelers, VAST, and their local organization, which is the Mad River Valley Ridge Runners, the snowmobile group. The U.S. Forest Service is involved. The state of Vermont is involved. Harwood Union High School is involved. And of course, there's also the Friends of the Mad River, who are dedicated to protecting the watershed here in our communities. So it's more than just the folks that are here. Before we start wrapping up, is there anything that anyone else wanted to add at all that we haven't touched on as of yet?
Bob and John alluded to it before about the importance of community support, and I think that's something that cannot be emphasized enough. Is we're community-oriented organizations doing the work of what the community members want. I know the riders listen to various community members for ideas and which direction to take. The path does that too. We want to make sure that the paths and trails that are built are what people actually want to be out on. It's just so important to have that community support, especially right now when we're seeing a lot of businesses in the Valley struggling because of having closed and whatnot. We've enjoyed a lot of business support over the years, all of these organizations. I think that's going to be down a little bit this year, so it's just really important to have individuals and households support these trail groups at the same time now. And maybe if they can help just a little bit more to make up for where the businesses aren't able to commit this year, helps keep us on track.
Yeah, and I would couple to that because I think that community support component is such an important thing to note. The amount of trail stewards that are out volunteering their time week after week, weekend after weekend to facilitate the building and maintenance of the network, but then also the success of our network, as well as a number of other items, has allowed the rec district to go to our voters and ask for additional funds to hire a full-time employee so we can further assist in the efforts that the groups here are engaged in. And I think that just is a sign of our community really behind recreation as a whole here and the development of our recreation economy.
Excellent. Well, thank you folks very much. I really appreciate everyone participating. I really encourage you to go to the various websites of these organizations. They're doing terrific work. Join the organizations as has been mentioned. Thanks so much. This Trails Network is really important to our community. It's really important to our residents and our visitors, and all of your hard work and all of the hard work of your members is really appreciated. So thank you all for participating, and we'll see you out on the trails.
Thank you, Eric.
See you guys.
Thanks, Eric.